Do you think all travel advice is good advice? Well, think again, because these 22 tips could be your worst decision yet if you're traveling. All right, so the first tip that I'm going to start with that I hear over and over again, which is probably the number one reason why I made this video, and then I added 21 more things to fill up the time here on an hour-long slot of the Yellow Productions Travel Tips by Chris podcast. But the first one is to avoid the touristy sites because they're all tourist traps. You know, these are places like Times Square, the Eiffel Tower. I've even heard people say if you're going to Italy, you should skip Rome and Venice entirely because they're just too touristy. Do you know why these places are touristy? Because they're amazing. That's why. I mean, if someone was going to Japan for their first time, I would not tell them to skip Tokyo, Kyoto, or Osaka, the big cities. I would tell them, in addition to going to those places, there might be some other places that they could see to experience the real Japan that aren't overrun by tourists, but I think it's absolutely ridiculous to tell people to avoid the most popular attractions in a destination. Now, it might be worthwhile to tell them to manage their expectations and know that they're going to stand in long lines and that there's going to be lots of people. And you know what? Even going to see the Mona Lisa, I feel like when you're in Paris, even if you don't appreciate art, yes, you do have to cram your way into the Louvre to go and see the Mona Lisa so that you've seen it. Do you have to stand there for hours with everyone else in the small room trying to take pictures? I don't think you do. But I also don't think it's worthwhile to miss the most popular attractions in a city. Brandon agrees with me and says some of those locations are too good to skip out on. Seth says if I'm in Tokyo, I'm definitely getting my Ichiran no matter what. Ichiran, popular ramen chain that many people say, too touristy, you shouldn't go there. Again, you know why it's touristy. It's good. Maybe people would say when you go to Tokyo, you should skip Disneyland altogether. But Kathy, she's going to Disney again, as you should. All right. The second worst piece of travel advice that I hear people say over and over and over again is that you shouldn't plan anything. You should actually just be spontaneous. The best kind of travel is spontaneous travel. Do you know what complete spontaneous travel leads you to? It leads you to wasted time and missed experiences. You know, there were days in the past, like in the 1970s, 50 years ago, when you could drive across country in the USA and just show up in a town and find a hotel and sleep in that hotel. But that is not the world that we live in anymore. The world that we live in today, reservations are a thing and hotels book out, and many places don't expect people to just show up and want a hotel room or to show up and want to eat dinner or to even show up and go on a hike. I was recently talking to a friend of mine who went to Oahu in Hawaii, and he was giving me a debrief of his trip, and he was telling me that they missed two great experiences because they didn't plan early enough to get the reservations for them. What were they? They were Oahu's number one hike, Diamond Head, which now requires reservations, and Hanauma Bay, the number one snorkeling spot on Oahu, because you know what? That requires reservations too. To make the best of your trip in this day and age, you absolutely need to decide what you want to do. A, so that you know even where you want to do so you can go there, and two, so you can make reservations when you need them. Over planning is definitely a thing. We're going to get to that in a little bit, but I've seen people that have spreadsheets down to like the 5-minute time frame. I'm not telling you to do that either. The third worst piece of travel advice I hear, and this one, it like perpetuates itself over and over again. I see this one on like TikTok travel hacks and Instagram travel hacks, and it drives me nuts, are people who will say to get the best deals on your flights that you should book them at Sunday night at midnight or Monday night at 2 a.m. or whatever. Pick the day, time, it doesn't matter. You know why it doesn't matter? There is no best date and time to book your flights to get the cheapest flights today. This was perhaps a relevant tip like 10 or 15 years ago when airfares were loaded in manually by people typing them in, or a database update that happened every night at midnight where it would load the new fares into the system so you could get one of the cheap ones. That doesn't exist. Flights are driven by artificial intelligent, complicated algorithms that are constantly looking at how many seats are being booked and how many seats are unbooked to ultimately try to get the most money from you as the consumer as possible. And so there is no particular time that's going to lead you to the best price. Now, it's like a rule of thumb, if you're taking like a long international flight, say you're going from the US to Europe or Asia, often the sweet spot for booking prices is not a day, but it's a time out from the trip. Often about 3 months out is kind of the sweet spot where the planners have already booked, and then the people that are short-term bookers haven't booked yet. And so we tend to book about 3 months out, where we find often the best deals in flights exist. If you're booking award tickets, then you might actually want to book like 364 days out or 362 days out. Like there are flights, airlines that do release their award tickets on a set like time frame, often a year out. So that is one contrary to this, but that is often not what people are talking about. And the other thing that you want to know about, like when it's cheapest to fly, again, unrelated to when you book your tickets, but if you want the cheapest flights, the days that are cheapest to fly are generally Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays. Why those 3 days? Well, because they're the days that are the generally least appealing to travel. If you're a business traveler, then you generally want to travel on Monday so that you can be at your place on Tuesday and Wednesday. If you're a leisure traveler, then you generally want to travel on Friday or Sunday. Friday, last day of the work week, people want to get out there. Same with business travelers. Sunday, people want to get home, which means that nobody's traveling on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays, which inevitably often end up being the days that we end up traveling because we look for the cheap flights. James points out, if you book out a couple months ahead and you've booked a refundable or flexible fare, you can absolutely periodically check for lower fares too, particularly if you're on someplace like Southwest that'll refund you the fare difference. That's a great suggestion. And Curvin recommends using Hopper as a great tool to know when to book. In many of these, that Hopper, Kayak, a lot of these things, they have like Google Flights, little things where you could like track and say like, I expect the prices to get more expensive, or I expect the prices to get lower. Those are absolutely very helpful. Kathy says she likes to book during sales, and this is a great tip too, that like many people don't actually realize that airlines do have sales, and they actually do. Like they actually like Black Friday, they will have fair sales, and when they're having a fair sale, that is a great time to book. Southwest Airlines, for example, they release fair sales every Wednesday, so you might just want to pay attention to when your airline does that. All right, the fourth worst piece of travel advice is when people tell you that you don't need to spend much on your hotel to get a good hotel. I mean, how bad can the $19 a night Circus in Las Vegas really be? If your friend or acquaintance or family member ever suggests to you that you should stay at the Circus in Las Vegas, defriend them right now. Immediately, they should be off your... Friends do not tell other friends to stay at the Circus. I often find that this myth comes from people who live in countries that may have good hotels. Maybe they come from Japan, and they're like, well, no hotel is bad. There are some really bad hotels out there, and so it is worthwhile doing your research and not just assuming that because it is a hotel that the basic amenities that you actually expect in a hotel are there for you. You know, I mean, if you don't mind stepping on like puddles in the hallway to get to your room in the carpet, if you don't mind someone's fake eyelashes on the wall next to your bed when you check in, then absolutely, by all means, book wherever you want to. Seth says, yeah, we had cockroaches on Maui. That person is banned from making travel plans for life, as they should be, Seth. That is a valid ban right there. And Amber says, those cheap hotels, they come with free take-home souvenirs. Indeed, you can take home as many of the bed bugs as you want. Zachary says the Circus in Las Vegas should be called a no-tel. That's right. Absolutely not a hotel. I agree. Okay, the fifth worst piece of travel advice ever is that if the hotel is number one on Tripadvisor, it must be good. I have seen some really mediocre hotels make it to the top of the list on Tripadvisor, especially the way they do their rankings now. That there is the default ranking is not based on like best reviews. The default ranking is now based on this thing they call For You. How did Tripadvisor decide For You? It's the number one hotel they want to put in front of you. Why? Is it because they get the best commissions? I mean, I don't really know, but I've seen in places like the Hampton Inn show up as number one, and like please, the Hampton Inn cannot be the #1 hotel in New York City. It just can't. I know it's not. But one of the reasons why really mediocre hotels make it high up in the Tripadvisor rankings could be because the hotel is encouraging reviews. You've seen it where like people be like, please review us. It really helps us out. If it's like a little small mom and pop kind of hotel, like people feel bad for the hotel. People are like, oh, I'm worried the hotel's going to go out of business, so I better give it a good review. People really do that. They really do. The other thing is there are people who rarely go on travel, and so any hotel to them is a good hotel. When I am reading reviews on Tripadvisor, I generally try to like search the reviews and look for the ones that I'm like, oh, this is from someone who travels a lot. So if I'm searching Marriott properties, then I'll in the reviews I will search Titanium, which is the word for like a top tier elite, or ambassador with Marriott. If I'm searching for Hyatts, I will search for globalist, because people in these reviews typically will say something like, I am a globalist with Hyatt and I've stayed at hundreds of Hyatts and this one's amazing or this one's awful. And like now I'm like, oh, I can trust this person's review where, little Aunt Susie who lives in Kansas. I've got nothing against people in Kansas, but little Aunt Susie who lives in Kansas that, takes one trip every 5 years, perfectly happy with the Hampton Inn. She gets a free breakfast and doesn't have to make her bed sheets because someone else comes in and does it for her. Yes, Brandon says that some of those reviews might not be very credible. Indeed, some of them might not be. And some male says, but I am a diamond member. Oh, well, because you have diamonds on your rings, or diamonds are a girl's best friend. Maybe some male diamonds aren't a girl's best friend. Okay, the 6th worst travel tip is people who tell you that to beat jet lag, you should just not sleep at all the night before, because then you're going to be really tired and you're absolutely going to sleep on the plane. So then you'll wake up refreshed at your destination. And you know what, really, that just ends up making you a lot more tired. Plane sleep just isn't very good sleep. It's not, you just don't get into deep sleep. I mean, okay, if you've got like a lie flat, business first class seat, that's a different story. But if you're back in steerage with the rest of us and you're upright like this, you're just not going to be rested even after 10 hours of deep sleep in those seats. Yes, you can start adjusting a couple of days before and like going to sleep an hour early or going to sleep an hour later each night to like get you adjusted to that time zone. But it's really better on your trip to start from a rested place rather than an exhausted place. Particularly if you end up at the airport and your flight's canceled and now you don't have another flight for 8 hours later, something like that. You'll just be so exhausted you can't even function at the airport. Do make sure you get a good night's sleep before your flight. That will help you beat jet lag. And if you want to know even more about how to beat jet lag, I have a whole 10-minute video about that in my guide to beating jet lag. I'll put a link in the description and at the end of this video. The person 52 asks, how do you fall asleep on a plane? First of all, what's Chris drinking today? Today I am drinking a mountain oolong tea from Gin the Tea Shop. This is a boba tea shop in Pasadena, California, where we were yesterday trying out Sujita artisan noodles that I posted a short on just the other day. Some of our best favorite ramen and sukemen in the LA area. And this is a pretty solid tea if you're up in Pasadena. How do I fall asleep on a plane? I have a really hard time falling asleep on a plane in economy, especially if, there's big people that are next to me or something like that. It's just really hard. If I'm in a lie flat seat or if I'm in a premium economy seat that's like bigger and this and that, I put on my noise canceling headphones, I put on my eye mask, and just lean back and try to sleep as much as I can. I don't think I have I don't use like melatonin or lavender sprays or this and that, but you know what, whatever works for you. Sam says this is a Chungus size tea. Yes, this is a big thing. Sick girl, my wife, she liked to take motion sickness pills to help her sleep, like Dramamine, because it has a twofold effect. Dramamine makes so you don't get motion sickness, and then it makes you drowsy too. She'll also sometimes take melatonin. We have chewable melatonin tablets that we give our 4-year-old daughter, the Curious Princess, to help her sleep on the flight. Adriana says, I could not sleep. Some mail says, compression socks have made my premium economy flights much more bearable. At 40 years old, I don't think I could do regular economy in long haul. Laurel says, I flew LAX to London Heathrow and did not sleep. Dr. Moby says, always sleep when you arrive. I mean, so my favorite thing to do is absolutely plan a flight that kind of like arrives someplace when it's time to sleep. So, or like near time to sleep. Maybe not like so that you're like getting to your hotel at 9 o'clock, but you're getting to your hotel at 6 o'clock or something like that. So it's like close to sleep time, and then you're kind of tired and you can go to sleep. And so if that means that like you got to be up all day and wherever you're from so that you can take a later flight so that then that flight gets there when it's time to sleep, I would absolutely do that. I hate flights, particularly from like the west coast of the US to Europe, that get into Europe at like 6 in the morning. You know, I'm like, man, after a long flight from LA to London Heathrow, I don't want to get to London Heathrow or Paris at 6 in the morning because I got a whole day in front of me. And I think taking a nap right as you get there is absolutely an accident because then you're like, body clocks, this and that. I'm giving you a little preview of what's in the How to Beat Jet Lag video. But when you do watch it, I will tell you that what I like to do when I get to a place is like, go out in the sun and walk and get some fresh air as much as I can to stay up to then try to get as close to bedtime as possible, even if that means it's 6 p.m. Yes, and Adriana says, take a Colosseum walking tour a few hours of arriving first time in Europe. Wrong decision. Instead, take it easy to see the city, go to sleep early. Yeah, that's you're either going to be exhausted, you're going to fall down the stairs, or if you go to like, here's a joke. We, on London, on our arrival day on one of our previous trips, we went to an evensong performance at Westminster Abbey. It's beautiful singing and this and that, but it's it's also good lullaby. You know, that's for sure. I was like, I can't. If I sit here any longer, I'm gonna fall asleep, and that would be rude. So we should go. All right. Worst piece of travel advice number 7 is to try to see as much as you can. I told you I would talk about over planning. This is the over planning one. The over planners of the world will go, just like the Energizer Bunny. They'll have a long list of all the things they need to see, and because they've got so many things to see, they're not going to spend more than 5 minutes in any attraction because they're just going to stand in front of the Eiffel Tower or the pyramid and take a selfie and then move on to the next one. It was so hilarious. My mom and we were in Los Angeles in front of what was then called the Staples Center. That's maybe now the Crypto Arena. It's where the Los Angeles Lakers play, okay? And where the Los Angeles Lakers play, they have a statue of like Kobe Bryant out in front. And we were standing there shooting a video, one of my LA travel tips videos. Yes, my mom does help me shoot some of the videos to run camera occasionally. And we're there and in front of this Kobe statue, and a tour bus comes up, and about, I don't know, 20 or 30 Chinese people get out of the tour bus. They're now in my shot, so we pause for a moment. And you know, you might think like, oh, well, the tour group got there. They're going to be there for a long time. I think 20 or 30 people filed out of the bus for about 3 minutes for them to like all get out of the bus, all take one selfie themselves with the statue, and then take a group photo, and then get back on the bus, and within 3 to 5 minutes, they were all on their way again to the next attraction. That's like certainly one thing where you're like on rails of whatever the bus tour is, but you definitely don't want to plan that so much yourself that like you can't take any time to enjoy or be like, hey, there's a Kobe statue. Hey, there's also a Shaquille O'Neal statue. Can we get a picture of that? No time. We need to keep going. The like when you overplan, it can absolutely be like you're on a slave ship and you've got somebody going like boom, 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 boom. And that's the one where like, particularly if you're the planner and the rest of the people you're traveling with aren't, they're going to hate you for the rest of the trip to be like, do we have to? Come on, Dad. Come on, Mom, or whoever it is. And so what I would say, if you are a planner and you're in this category, is to plan some unplanned time. Like on your agenda, just plan like an hour for like relax, or plan an hour for like get to the Staples Center, 1 hour, explore. There you go. And then that'll give you time. If you're tired, you can sit down at the cafe or this and that, but leaving some time open so you can just wander around the hotel and the neighborhood to explore. Whenever we go on long trips, our first night or first day, as we heard, we leave unplanned. Well, it's planned. It is planned to not do anything important, not make any reservations places, not go to Disneyland, not take a tour of the Coliseum, but like just get accustomed to the time zone, eat at odd hours, pick up any supplies we need from the supermarket, walk around the hotel, see where the pool is, walk around the neighborhood, figure out what's around there, and just get our sense of place. And then, because we don't have any reservations, we can go to sleep whenever we want to. Ebook says the worst travel mistake is not listening to Yellow Productions. Hey, if you really like that tip, because I like that tip, definitely give this video a thumbs up so Ebooks Productions knows. And then YouTube knows that you enjoy this video too, but that is a great one. Ebooks agrees that mid-afternoon is a good break time. Head back to the hotel room. Absolutely. Lowell says, what about tours where they keep you on time schedule? This is where I am not a huge fan of organized tours. That is just me. And Kathy says, I am an over-planner. I am learning not to be, though. All right, that is good, Kathy. Plan in your enjoy and relax time. Just like Larry says here, be comfortable in getting in rest and decompress. Specifically, if you have a long trip, the only way you're going to enjoy a long trip is if you do actually have time to rest and decompress. Cottage Full of Love says, I leave days open for unplanned time and it hurts my type A personality, but you got to do it. The way we often plan our trip is we will have some major things we want to do and minor things we want to do, and we will have yes, and there's certain geographic locations we need to be in. So if we're going to Japan, they'll be based around a city. Like in Tokyo, we want to see these 5 major attractions and these 15 minor attractions. And so, each one of those major attractions is probably a half day. And then we see what of these minor attractions we can kind of fit around it. But if we don't fit in all the minor attractions, it's okay. And actually our tier list, in addition to the major attractions and the minor attractions, we'll also have restaurants sorted by the same things, must eat, and then maybe eat these if we happen to be nearby. Okay. And I see a thing about organized tours. Laurel says, I did an organized tour and it sometimes felt rushed, particularly for us as content creators, as YouTubers. Organized tours really don't work for us because they're made for people to even maybe, yes, feel rushed. But if they have an hour in a destination, OC Girl and I will need 3 hours to see the place, record some video, take some takes, take some pictures. So yes, that's the other reason why we don't love the organized tours. When we took the YouTuber trip to Korea some years back now, which seems like a world away before the pandemic, they had the 8 or 10 of us YouTubers on this organized tour that the Korean tourism department had set up. And the feedback that they got from the YouTubers all the time was you need to give us more time. You need to give us, they're okay, you have 20 minutes at this town to go out and film. We're I need to see the town first. And then what am I going to film? I don't even know what this place is. Okay. The number 8 worst piece of travel advice is when people tell you you don't need to learn the local language to wherever you're going because everybody speaks English. Doesn't matter where you are, everybody speaks English. And while it might be hard to become fluent in the local language, learning a few words absolutely goes a long way for the locals. They'll appreciate that you learned a couple words and they will go further to help you than if you just went up to them and barked in English or whatever language it is that you think they speak. And of course, there's also places like Japan where they might understand English, but then they don't practice it enough so that they can't speak it. And so that does happen in a lot of places where there is so much English media that there are people who consume it a lot more and read it a lot more, but will absolutely have a hard time speaking it. Adriana, thank you so much for your support. Adriana says, we planned our Italy trip and we accomplished 80% of our planned activities. Stick with your plans. It works. Great to hear, Adriana. And again, thank you for the super chat. Lowell says, how long does it take you to do a day tour? I mean, I guess if there's something that says a day tour, maybe it takes us 2 days to do the day tour. Something like that. Yeah, Ton says always have a plan B and a plan C. Make it so you can also switch activities and days. Those are good plans. Now, I think another one about language. So, if you're going to France, it's helpful to learn bonjour, bonsoir. If you're going to Japan, it's useful. Again, even little things. If you want water, to be able to say mizu. Or if you want beer, to say biru, right? Just the people that are serving you will appreciate, even if they're very simple, that you've gone just that little step. Or if you've got Google Translate out and you're just fumbling with it, as opposed to if they come up to you and you're just like, okay, I'd like to get this, that, and the other, blah, 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 blah. That's the other mistake I feel like a lot of people make when they're in a country that they are non-native speakers and hoping that the people understand their native tongue is speaking too fast. I don't know about you, but of the languages that I know a little bit of, but not a lot, it really helps if other people speak slowly. At the point that they speak very fast is at the point where I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about anymore because you're speaking a mile a minute. But if you slow down, then people can pick out, they're like, oh, I know that word, I know that word, and I know that word, and I can go get my buddy to help me put that all together. Zachary Smith says, no need to learn language with the new Samsung AI for instant translation. I still think, maybe again, you don't need to be fluent in it, but I still think it's helpful to learn the words hello, goodbye, thank you very much, that actually come out of your mouth instead of the AI's mouth. Or do you just do that, konnichiwa? Do you just type that and then send that out? I don't know. Hey, different strokes for different folks. Okay. The ninth thing that's a really awful travel tip is when people say that you should avoid public transportation. Okay, there are definitely places where the public transportation isn't all that great, but I think categorically when people say when you travel, you should avoid the public transportation, period. Doesn't matter where you're going, doesn't matter what public transit, that is a really bad travel tip. Now, an example of this is I've been to Rome a number of times, and I've talked to a lot of people who've been to Rome, and many people who've been to Rome have never taken the subway in Rome. The subway in Rome is actually pretty good. It's a pretty good subway in Rome, especially compared to places like New York City. Same in Tokyo. I mean, the Tokyo subway is nothing like the Rome subway, but there are people who go to Tokyo and never ride the subway. And honestly, I feel like riding the subway in these cities is part of the experience in being there. People don't ride the subway in Tokyo because they're worried they're going to get lost, or they're worried they're going to get pushed onto the train and get squished and not be able to get out. And yes, that does happen in some stations in Tokyo, but just avoid rush hour and you can avoid those few stations that happens in. But the trains in Japan are absolutely not to be missed. I think the same thing goes for buses. I, as someone who grew up in Southern California, in my formative years, definitely was of the opinion that buses were not the best way to get around. In Southern California, buses don't come frequently. They don't go where you want. Southern California is just not really built out for bus transportation. But I have found that the bus is a great way to get around places like London, like Hong Kong, like Singapore. I name those cities because they all have double-decker buses, and I think double-decker buses are really cool. But not just double-decker buses. There's a lot of great buses around the world. There are some places you might want to avoid the bus, though, like Thailand, where the buses aren't air-conditioned. That's the unair-conditioned bus in Thailand. I'm not going to do that again. But the SkyTrain, which is their elevated train, and the subway, where it does run in Thailand, actually is pretty good. My other caveat on this is we had a little kid, we have a 4-year-old. Public transportation, hard to get around with strollers and all this extra luggage. So in these last few years, we have found it really valuable to have rental cars, even when we go to Japan, even when we go to places that you might be take public transit. Vancouver really helped us to have a car to transport all of the baby gear. But I guess the one positive tip about this is if you do have a younger one, if you're taking public transit, you generally don't need to lug a car seat or rent a car seat because they're generally not required on public transit. Joe Otaku says mass transit anywhere out of the U.S. is worthwhile. Now, if you go to a Greyhound station in Chicago, you should avoid the Greyhound station in Chicago, is what Joe is basically trying to say. Dr. Moby says trains are a great way to travel in Europe. For example, London to Paris or Paris to Brussels. They sure are. Submail enjoyed the Hong Kong shout out. And Valerian says, I'm number one on taking public transit in my budget. Yes, public transit, good prices. So we're going to get to, yes, Adriana says in Italy, the public transit system is amazing. Love their train system. It is. And I think a lot of people, maybe they look at the Colosseum and they're like, oh, the trains in Italy are going to be awful. But the trains in Italy actually like legitimately good. And I think the trains in Italy, if they go where you want to go, a lot better than taking a taxi in most cases. All right, speaking of taxis, let's go to the opposite of this worst travel tip. This one, number 9, was all about avoiding public transportation. And now maybe people like Valerian, and I know not Valerian, but the one who said here, like, I like the budget of public transportation, will be people who will say, avoid taxis. You should just avoid taxis because they're too expensive. And I might sound like I'm contradicting my previous tip where I said, like, take the public transit. It's good in many places. To don't take taxis. Chris, what do you want us to do? This is the extreme of avoid public transportation. These are the people who say only take public transportation because taxis cost too much. But these people will suggest that you take public transit, a $2 public transit that takes you 2 hours instead of taking a $20 taxi for 20 minutes. I will take the $20 taxi for 20 minutes and I will have 90 more minutes of my life to do something at that destination. Either make a video or just enjoy it or take photos, or I got 90 more minutes now that I can sit at that Paris cafe with my time on the agenda that just said relax, and I didn't have to go so much every 5 minutes. And I think that people often underestimate the value of taxis, especially when they've spent thousands of dollars to get themselves to the destination. They've taken all of this time off work, and really if they looked at how much money they spent per available minutes at the destination, because this is what you're really buying, right? You spend a bunch of money to get yourself there, and now you have a finite amount of minutes. I think it is worthwhile to buy more minutes back. Okay, yes, there are some really expensive taxis. If you're in Tokyo and you fly into Narita, don't take the taxi from Narita into central Tokyo. That will cost you hundreds of dollars. But in my Singapore series, I did a video, lots of videos on Singapore, but in particular, one of the recent ones about how much does it cost to go to Singapore for 5 days. And I took a lot of taxis when I was in Singapore, and there's so many people who rail on me in those videos. They're like, oh, you could have saved so much more money if you didn't take the taxis. I'm like, but the taxis in Singapore, one, are amazing. They're everywhere, and they're actually pretty cheap in comparison. And they're literally $20 to take the taxi for a 20-minute ride. Not that expensive, and literally to save like an hour. I'm like, I could make another video because I took the taxi, spent that $20. It was absolutely worth the money that I spend. I think the thing, sometimes people underestimate too related to taxis, is this one, which Gene says, we took a London taxi to find our Airbnb. Best money we spent, as we even had a wee bit of trouble finding it. Yes, that's the great part about taking a taxi or an Uber or Lyft or rideshare, is you will get to where you're going. They'll bring you to the front door, not you get to the nearest train, bus stop, and then you're like, which way do I go? Do I go left? Do I go right? I have no idea which way they go, because I've never been to this place. I don't know which way or left or right is. I've got a map. I can't look at it this way. I'm dragging all this luggage. I've got my phone out. I absolutely think arriving in foreign places with your luggage, spending the money on a taxi to get to your first destination, super worth the price. Carmen says, good to know about taxis in Singapore. And Ton says, taxis are a lifesaver for sudden rain. Certainly don't want to be pulling your luggage out when it is raining. Christina says, taxis were maximum $2 in Uzbekistan. Never bothered with the metro that cost more. Those are some cheap taxis. Billy asks if I ever rent a scooter when you travel around. No to either scooter. I never like those rent by the app scooters, and never like scooters that are more like motorcycles. I just consider both those things to be death traps, and I have a high propensity to live. All right. The 11th worst piece of travel advice is that you don't need cash wherever you go anymore, because cash is dead and everybody takes digital payments now. The extreme of this is like you don't even need a credit card because everybody's going to take Google Pay or Apple Pay. And seriously, anybody who gives you that bit of travel advice has not traveled much, because around the world, it doesn't matter where you go. Even if you go someplace like China, where, you'll hear the stories about China, like everything's WeChat or some, Chinese digital payment scheme, you're still going to find the odd place that takes cash. You're going to find the dude selling water on the Great Wall when you're really thirsty only takes cash. Wherever you go, make sure you have some of the local currency, even if it's only the equivalent of $50 in your pocket, but it's at least something in the event that your credit cards get declined, in the event that your phone gets tossed in the river. Have some actual money. You'll find it to be really useful. A friend of mine had this challenge when she went to the south of France, flew into Paris, took a train to the south of France, got in a taxi, hadn't taken out any French currency, hadn't taken out any euros, went to pay the taxi with her credit card. Taxi didn't take credit cards. Taxi's like, I'll be happy to drive you to an ATM and wait for you to take out money and then take you to where you're going. Guess what? That took a lot longer and cost a lot more, because now she was paying the taxi fee to get her to the ATM to get the money out as to where they were going. Valerian says, could someone pickpocket your phone? Absolutely, someone could pickpocket your phone. So yes, it's good to have like your phone in one pocket, your credit card in another pocket, your cash in another pocket. Have that stuff. Like, that's the great part about cash. You can have $50 here and $50 here and $50 here, and like if somebody takes one or the other, you've still got something to like at least get you back to your hotel or get you where you're going, so you're not stranded in a foreign city with like absolutely nothing. Adriana says there are a lot of places and small businesses in Brooklyn, cash only. I find it pretty much everywhere in the world. You will find small businesses that are cash only, regardless of how high tech we think that country might be. But yes, at the same time with like COVID, I think that like accelerated a lot of places that also only do digital payments. So I think today cash is king, but you do need like a credit or debit card, Visa or MasterCard, taken the most around the world. The 12th worst piece of travel advice is that credit cards are evil, and that you should use your debit card for everything. Okay, why is this an awful bit of travel advice? Well, if you listen to Dave Ramsey at all, he's the number one person to tout that credit cards are evil. And I'm not going to argue with Dave Ramsey that the debt part of credit cards and the interest structure is evil. So I am not suggesting that you ever carry a balance on your credit card, but credit cards compared to debit cards in countries that do them, particularly the USA, there is much more consumer protection built into a credit card. If somebody steals your debit card and they use it, they are using your money. And even if you do get it back, your money in your account is going to be locked up for a long time. Where if somebody steals your credit card, you just call back the credit card company and be like, somebody stole it, I didn't make those charges. They're like, cool. And maybe it takes them a while to investigate it, but that was never your money to begin with. It didn't come out of your account. You didn't pay for it. And I think it's also worthwhile to take multiple credit cards with you from different issuers so that you can make sure one actually works, and have a debit card too, so you can take money out of an ATM. But that's another one where like people go like, oh, somebody steals my debit card, they won't have the PIN number. People are sneaky. They steal all of those things. They steal the debit card, they steal a PIN number, and then they take the money out of your account, and that's money that the banks go like, well, they had your PIN number and they had your debit card, so lucky you, or unlucky you, that's not your money anymore. All right. Henry, thank you for your support, Henry. Henry says, Chris, throughout your epic travels, can you talk one experience where you felt you were ripped off or scammed by a tour, hotel, or Airbnb? What was my number one scam? Sure. I feel like the number one, like, scam, like I have to go like one time I was really scammed. Was my mom and we went to Beijing, and we wanted to go to the Great Wall. And so the couple options, we were staying at the JW Marriott in Beijing, couple options to get to the Great Wall from the JW Marriott. One is you could take a taxi. Like, you could take a taxi there. Okay, we're like, I don't know if we want to take a taxi. 2, you can have like a private tour that you can like charter a driver to take you to the Great Wall. 3, you can sign up on a guided bus tour. It'll pick you up. That's what we did. We signed up on this bus tour, and this bus would pick people up from like 5 or 6 different hotels and take you to the Great Wall. Except on the way to the Great Wall, we had to stop by a Chinese medicine store for like an hour at this Chinese medicine store, where they like check your pulse, like touch your hands, tell you what medicine that you need. And of course, you're on the bus. You can't leave, you know? It's like this very hard sell kind of thing. And then they took us to like a jade shop, and then they took us to lunch, and then they took us to the Great Wall, where we had like 90 minutes on the Great Wall. But I feel like we could have had like 4 hours on the Great Wall had we just not stopped at the Chinese medicine shop and the jade shop, which is another reason why I'm always very careful with tours. I feel like many of them, especially if they're taking you to like the shop they want to, like total scam. I also want to thank Kathy in the chat. Kathy says we have a Wise card. It's fantastic. Good currency exchange. Kathy's been supporting the channel for 13 months as a fellow explorer, and said, Chris, congratulations on 350,000 subscribers. Thank you very much, Kathy, and thank you everybody who's pushed that subscribe button here on Yellow Productions. All this is only possible with your support. Okay. The 13th worst bit of travel advice ever is that you should only eat the street food at the destination you're going to, because the street food is the best food. Now, street food can be really tasty and authentic, and if you watch my videos a lot, you will know I eat a lot of street food. Street food can also make you really sick, so be careful. I was talking to another YouTuber who will remain nameless, and he was telling me, he was like, Chris, I was at this one street vendor in this other country, and like right next to where I was eating, they were killing a goat. It was so great. And I'm like, that's great, man. I don't know that the goat killed on the street really is the most like sanitary method of prevention. I'm like, dude, how do you not get sick when you go eat at these places? He's like, oh man, I like Pepto-Bismol, Imodium, like I pack it all down before I go. I'm like, all right. There are, as I've done this research on things, there are definitely people that are like more susceptible to stomach illnesses than others. I think I'm one of those people that is more susceptible to stomach illnesses than others. OC Girl and I, as husband and wife, we can go places, we can eat the same food, same thing, we're in the same places. I get sick, she doesn't get sick. So it's often not just the food in places, it's also the water and the ice that can make you sick too. And so also stick to bottled drinks in many street food vendors, particularly if you're of the sensitive variety, which I definitely am. Amber says, I'm so paranoid of unsanitary food conditions, gut rot is just not worth it. It's not. And I think that this is one where, like, luckily OC Girl and I have come to this, she knows that my tummy is more sensitive than hers, so you know, I get first right of refusal at street food vendors, right? You know, go and like look and be like, oh, is the meat just sitting out and fly sitting on it, or is the meat chilled somehow? Do they have a way to clean things? Like, you know, are cats walking all over their food? So I have the first right of refusal to be like, oh, Girl, I don't think I can do this one. Can we go to that one over there? And she'll be like, okay, I get it. All right. 14th worst bit of travel advice is don't travel solo. There are people who say, Bill, you can't travel solo. You can't travel solo. You gotta travel with other people. Travel by yourself is just like totally lame. How are you so lame that you don't have anybody to travel with? All of those things are inaccurate statements. Yes, it's great to travel with other people. Great to share your travels with other people. But I've also had plenty of great solo travel trips. OC Girl has had plenty of great solo travel trips. The great part about traveling solo is you get to do whatever you want, whenever you want, eat whatever you want. And if you want, you can join local tours. Maybe you don't have to join a bus tour. You can join a local walking tour. or group activities like cooking classes, and make some new local friends. Now, some people may cite safety to be like, it's not safe to travel solo. And yeah, if you're going to a sketchy destination, then join a tour group. There's plenty of tour groups for singles. 15th worst piece of travel advice is to book your trip as you go. I kind of covered this one a little bit in Don't Plan Anything, but I'm going to lean into this one even more right here because I hear this one a lot. People who are like, I just book a bunch of one-way flights and then I book my hotels when I get there and I just kind of leave it open like that. I never know where I'm going to go. So I never have more than the next hotel and I never have a flight out of where I'm going. I just have where I'm going. While this can sometimes work out, depending upon where you're going, it can also have some really disastrous and really expensive results. Especially you end up someplace like San Diego, and you end up here during Comic-Con, and then you find out, I got to this place, and all of the hotels are $1,000 a night, and all of the flights out are $1,000 because everybody's trying to leave too, because it's the end of Comic-Con. My recommendation is to book a Plan A, with some flexible hotel and airfare reservations, and you can always change the Plan A. But at least you have some things you can do to get you back to where you're going, and you've got some places that you can sleep for the night, and at a price point that you're also okay with. The other thing to I think be aware of is that many countries won't let you in unless you can prove that you're leaving on like a visitor visa. And some countries, this is worthwhile looking up when you're going places. Some countries will actually require that you have a round trip to the place you came from. Like if you flew from Los Angeles to get there, that you need to leave going back to Los Angeles too. We tend to be people that really like to do open jaws, where we're we'll leave LA and we'll go to Honolulu, and then from Honolulu we'll go to Tokyo, and then from Tokyo we'll go to Korea, and then from Korea we'll come back to LA. But there are places that might be it doesn't work. You need to come and go from the same place. Or again, you need to show us how you can leave. And if you're just booking as you go, and you end up there, and they're like, "How are you leaving?" And you're like, "Well, I'm not. I don't have a ticket to leave." They're like, "Well, you don't get to come in then." And again, you can always book something that departs in a week, and you change it to go someplace else, but you at least have that there. Worst piece of travel advice number 16 is to book the cheapest flight. I know the search aggregators do it to us, right? We search for something, the cheapest stuff comes up to the top. So of course, that's what we want to book. But not all airlines are created equal. Not all flight paths are created equal. Not all airports are created equal. And definitely not all tickets have the same benefits. Yeah, the airfare is $20 to fly to London, but you arrive at midnight at an airport that's 2 hours outside of London without any public transit options. Now you have to take a $200 taxi. Oh, it cost you $100 to check your luggage, $150 to select a seat, and another $100 to print your boarding pass at the airport because you didn't print it at home. So factor in all those costs when you're booking your airfare. You might find out that some of the big boy legacy carriers that are considered more expensive might actually be cheaper than your discount carrier. Worst piece of travel advice number 17 is that you should travel like a local. You know what it means to travel like a local? Well, if you're going to some place like Paris, that means you're going to take the metro into the business district in the morning when it's rush hour and really busy. You're going to wait at the post office in Paris after work to mail something because, you're going to wait there because there's only 3 people in line, but that's going to take you 30 minutes because you're in Paris after all. You're going to get stuck waiting for the train to get home because the train probably broke down. You're going to go grocery shopping at 7 p.m. with everybody else that's grocery shopping. You're then going to have a laundromat session to wash your clothes because, in some place like France, a lot of places don't have their own laundry machine. And you're going to go to sleep someplace without air conditioning. If you're following the Paris Olympics, no air conditioning provided in the Olympic Village. I'm not picking on Paris. What I'm picking on is that to truly travel like a local means it's actually not that great for you to travel. All of these things are things that you probably don't want to do because they're a waste of time, So I actually think there is something to be said for traveling like a tourist, but not the one who's on rails and only takes selfies. And there was a, oh, here we go. Amber says, or you can travel like a local. You can spend all day on Zoom calls. You can do that too. Okay. Let's go to number 18. I hear this one a lot too, and this one is so wrong. There are people who will say that the best way to get upgraded on flights is to dress professionally, because if you dress nice, the ticket agent or the people on board the plane will look at you and see that you clearly belong in first class because of how nicely you are dressed. Couldn't be further from the truth today, because today, maybe back in the day when like the people could actually decide who they upgraded, but now all of the upgrades are decided by the galactic overlords that we call the AI or the computer systems that run the world. But I'll say, like, in particular, on a recent trip that I was on, I had like maybe 5 different flights, and I got complimentary upgrades on 3 of those flights, but they were all at gate upgrades. They were like upgrades that, like, when I went to scan my boarding pass at the gate, boop, then the machine would say, new seat assigned, 4E. And then they'd be like, oh, here we have a new boarding pass for you. You've been upgraded to 4E. All algorithmically determined. They never saw me. And yes, on some of the flights, I was dressed like this. Definitely not somebody that you would say, look nice, belongs in business class. You know, I got my I got my yellow YouTuber t-shirt on. I did go on one of those flights though, and one of the flight attendants says, like, I know who you are. That's what he said as he goes by. I know you. I know you. Well, I'm watching you. It wasn't that way. I did like the one time I went on Singapore Airlines and I was trying to take pictures of my ticket selfie for the thumbnail. And the flight attendant, fan of Yellow Productions, was like, would you like me to take that for you? I'm like, I would love for you to take that for me. So if you've watched my Singapore Airlines business class review, the thumbnail for that video was taken by a Singapore Airlines flight attendant. Okay. Tip number 19, that's an awful tip, is to not be afraid to accept invitations from locals because you'll have some incredible and authentic experiences. Chris, I don't know, that sounds good. Why is that a bad piece of advice? Well, because, you know, those invitations from locals that you accept, you might end up as a subject of the next Crime Junkies podcast or whatever TV show there is about true crime stories nowadays. Sadly, scam artists exist everywhere, even in places like Tokyo. And especially if it's an invitation to a bar, especially if it's an invitation to a jewelry shop, make sure to exercise some caution. I'm not telling you to be cold. I'm not telling you to not talk to the locals. I'm just telling you, when you're on the street of Bangkok and somebody comes up to you and they're really nice and they chat with you for 5 minutes and they seem really nice, and then they're like, oh, you two look like a nice couple. Hey, you know, I know this great jewelry shop. It's got great sales. Can I take you there? No, you can't take me there. Thanks, though. Have a good time. All right. James says, related to attire, I once wore a drug enforcement agency shirt on the airplane, and the flight attendant asked me how many there were from the drug enforcement agency, and I said, I'm not in the drug enforcement agency, just to offend. That is hilarious, James. I wonder if anybody's tried that with a CIA t-shirt, you know, like, part of the CIA, here we are. All right. 20th worst piece of travel advice is for people who say, don't ever check your suitcase. When you're flying on a plane, never check your suitcase. Yes, there are a whole bunch of benefits that come with carrying on only. I've talked about that a lot in my luggage videos and packing videos. But to limit yourself to just carry on, I think is ridiculous. For some situations, it's absolutely nice to have the extra room that comes with checking in luggage. And yes, that does mean you'll have to wait for it. But, you know, people who do carry on only for long trips, and there's many people that are proud of it, and there's probably many of you that are watching this right now that are proud of it, and for you, rock on. But for everybody else who's being forced into it, just know that, I don't know, if you're packing carry-on for 3 weeks, what does that mean you're going to have to do? That means, okay, well, you won't have to wait 30 minutes for your luggage at the airport, and there's a higher probability chance it's going to get there because it won't misconnect or something like that if you're connecting. But you are going to have to do laundry. You're going to have to find laundry. You're going to have to plan out laundry. You're going to spend a lot more time doing laundry than I think picking up your suitcase at the airport. If I'm going for 10 days or less, me personally, I prefer to just bring it all for 10 days and not have to waste my time doing laundry, let alone finding them, and just do it when I get back. Worst piece of travel advice number 21 is to hitchhike your way through the USA. These are the last 2, I should say. These are courtesy of OC Girl. OC Girl hears this all the time from people not from the USA that have seen all the movies about the USA that just talk about hitchhiking, standing on the thing and I'll just hitchhike. Please don't hitchhike. There's, I guess with the advent of the axe murderer and things like that, we also don't want you, yes, in the next episode of Dateline or in the next Crime Junkies podcast. People in the USA, if they have anything left up here, they don't put their thumb out to hitchhike anymore. And the 22nd worst piece of travel advice, also from OC Girl, is for people who tell you that you don't need a guidebook anymore, that you can find everything you need from online video, be it YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, whatever. Even us, as avid video producers, we still buy guidebooks when we go places. This one right here is a guidebook on Kyushu. This one produced by a Japanese company. We love these if we go to Japan. They have like all these pictures. They have all these pictures of things, and they have like pictures of the food, and they have like sample itineraries, but also they've got just like great maps. And you know what? Sure, Google Maps is great and all these things, but like there's really something that's worthwhile about like looking at your whole itinerary on a map like this and really being able to grasp it all in your head, that I feel like a book can do, that I feel like a video just can't do. So, for every trip that we go on, we generally buy 2 or 3 guidebooks from different publishers to that destination. It's still worth the price.
Fellow explorers, it is now Q&A time. If you've got a question, I've got an answer.
All right, Larry says, what are your thoughts on unbound merino or other merino wool shirts, pants for travel? I wear merino wool socks when I travel by, what's the sock company's name? Smart Wool. I also wear bamboo shirts by Caraloha. I've not worn any merino wool shirts or pants. So Larry, I have no opinion on them, but if anybody else has an opinion for Larry, please let a friend know in the chat if you're on the live stream, or let a friend know if you're watching the archive. Points Traveler just joined in. Points Traveler is in Hawaii, in Wailea. Points Traveler, welcome to the live stream. Just in time for Q&A. Janelle says, I love Smart Wool. Meritocratic Mafia says, would you recommend skip lagging to save money? Have you ever heard of anyone being blacklisted because of it? So for those who don't know the term skip lagging is like an art of like finding a fare that is cheaper to go to your destination, but like a little farther, so like you connect someplace. So like, for example, let's say you wanted to go from LA to Dallas, but the tickets from LA to Dallas were $500. But you could find that there's a ticket from LA to New York that connects in Dallas that's only $100. Why? Because the airlines are trying to compete for LA to New York City. It so happens that to get you there, they got to connect through Dallas. So you book that ticket for $100 that goes LA, Dallas, New York, and you take the flight, and instead of like getting on the connecting flight from Dallas to New York, you just miss your connection. And you've saved a bunch of money. Airlines don't like it. They've like sued a number of the websites that say where the skip lagging fares are, how to find them. But Meritocratic Mafia, I do not personally know anybody who has been blacklisted because of it. For me, it just sounds like a lot of work. I personally don't do it, so I personally wouldn't recommend to you something that I personally don't do. Soham says, Chris, is it worth getting one of those super expensive high-end suitcases? Depends which one you mean. Depends what you're doing for travel. But I will tell you, I've had a Rimowa suitcase for a really long time, 20 years. And recently had an experience where one of the wheels broke on it. I took it to the Rimowa store. This is a 20-year-old suitcase. The Rimowa store said, like, well, it's out of warranty. So we'll fix it. We have to charge you for it. We're going to charge you $60, but for $60, you brought it to our store. We're going to ship it to our return facility. They're going to replace all 4 wheels, and they're going to ship it back to you too. I'm like, man, for $60, I couldn't even pay to ship this suitcase for $60. And so I do think when you get into the super expensive high-end suitcases, some of them can absolutely be worth it. But if you're not in it for like the warranty or the service, put that aside, then you're like, well, is a $200 level 8 suitcase versus a $2,000 Rimowa, oh, that's a big difference in price. I bought my Rimowa suitcases when they were $400 in Germany long time ago, which, was maybe twice the price of another comparable Travel Pro suitcase at the time. Now they're like 10 times the price. I don't know. That's that's some math you need to work on, but you're like, you would pay that if you're like, I really want the service to make sure that this suitcase that I bought is just always gonna be fixed. Adam says, what would you do if you have one day in New York City? I would go to Times Square, I would go to Central Park, and I would walk the High Line. I would visit maybe the World Trade Center Observatory if it wasn't too busy, or the Top of the Rock Observatory. Christina says, you ever thinking of taking another cruise in the future? We have no immediate plans to take another cruise in the future. We certainly haven't ruled it out. We enjoyed the Disney cruise. Maybe if it was right time, right place, right price, but we're not actively looking for one for our next trips. Adriana says, have you ever been in New York for the Thanksgiving parade? Never for the Thanksgiving parade in New York. Probably the biggest parade we've ever been to, if you don't count the Disney parades. We've been a lot to Disney parades, is the Cherry Blossom Parade in Washington, D.C. I've been to that one maybe 3 times. I think that's a pretty cool parade. Definitely not as big as the New York parade, but a cool one. Jay says, who needs a travel book when you've got Yellow Productions travel videos? Thank you so much for that, Jay. And I will tell you, I certainly do, even with the maps and things like that we put in the videos now, try to give you as good of a sense I can of a destination. But I wouldn't blame you for still buying a couple travel books too. Yip Animation says, a bad travel tip I receive when I travel to Maui: eat chain food and only chain food, since chain food tends to be cheaper and you always know what to expect. You always know what to expect when you go to McDonald's. So yes, that is absolutely a bad tip too. Ton says, what do you prefer, local SIM, eSIM, or pocket Wi-Fi? Because there's 3 of us that are traveling, so myself, OC Girl, my wife, and our daughter, the Curious Princess, for us a pocket Wi-Fi works better, because a pocket Wi-Fi, we can connect 3 devices to that pocket Wi-Fi and share the price to that rather than a SIM or an eSIM. If I'm going by myself, then an eSIM, because it's just easier. Michael Yip says, what's your experience using the Charles Schwab ATM card abroad? How did getting international currency work for you? I always use the Charles Schwab ATM card to take my money out when going abroad. In that account, I just keep $2,000. That is my money for withdrawing when I go to other places. That way, if I lose it or things like that, it's limited to how much people could steal out of the account. And it works great. Every country I've been to always works. Maybe not from the first ATM, because maybe I found the local ATM, but I always find I can use that card. They never charge any ATM fees, good exchange rates, so I absolutely endorse it. Billy says to use the Hopper app. Not me personally. For my flight bookings, I tend to use Kayak and Google Flights to do my primary research. Wen says, what kind of transportation is convenient from Tokyo Haneda Airport to Yokohama Cruise Port? When, unfortunately, at the top of my head, I don't know, but if you leave a comment on the archive of this video, once we're done being live and it's archived, I'll look it up and I'll tell you. Dr. Moby says to use airport lounges. I love airport lounges. Use them all the time. I got a whole set of airport lounge reviews. If you want to see them, type in Yellow Productions airport lounge. I've also got a whole video about my guide to airport lounges. Valerian says, I saw electric riding suitcase, which sounds cool. Carmen says, I thought Rimowa was lifetime warranty. It should be. So here's the caveats on the Rimowa lifetime warranty. Rimowa, with their greatly increased prices from a couple years ago, now offer lifetime warranties on everything. Back when I bought my Rimowa, the lifetime warranty only applied to the aluminum cases. They didn't apply to the plastic cases. In that case, there was only a 5-year warranty. I've had other issues, maybe the first 10 years I've had the case, where zippers broke or things like that, and they always replaced it free of charge. I guess after 20 years, they were finally it's out of warranty, but the cost was very nominal. I don't even think again, that they could ship it for $60. So, Carmen says, I looked Rimowa was $1,000 for carry-on. I'm in the market. If you have not seen my reviews on the Carl Friedrich suitcases, I think they make suitcases that are comparable to Rimowa's at half the price, or maybe even less than half the price. My, however, comment to that caveat is there's not a Carl Friedrich store around the corner from you, so you're not going to have the same service that you will of Rimowa, but they're pretty solid suitcases. And then if you're not looking for a luxury case, I think Level 8 makes really solid suitcases, well made, and I haven't had anything break on them yet, but I've had so many suitcases recently that I'm only taking most of our suitcases for 3 or 4 trips before I'm on to the next one to do the next review. Larry gives Level 8 a thumbs up. Thank you for that, Larry. Aperture says, how did you get that new Vegas stand in the background? It looks awesome. That new Vegas stand right there, Aperture 115, that comes from San Diego Comic-Con. There was an artist or vendor there that was selling a whole bunch of new Vegas stuff. So this guy like made this sign. So this is like a two of a kind. He has one in his house and he sold one at Comic-Con. I figured it was applicable as someone who does a bunch of Vegas content. And CCCC says, is it worth going to San Diego Comic-Con since it's only going to be there for a couple more years? Because I heard all the prices are going up. It's $1. I mean, I've been to Comic-Con every year for the last 30 years, so I think it's worth going to San Diego Comic-Con. Is it busy? Is it haze? Is it all that stuff? It's all that stuff. But if you like comics or pop culture, you know what? Do it. Do it. Carmen says pocket Wi-Fi for us on the pocket Wi-Fi thing. All right. Chain restaurants. Brandon will only go to chain restaurants. Masad says, Chris, is there a reason? What is the reason of astounding success of your friend Josh's road trip videos? I would love to get your opinion. Thank you, Soar. I think two things. So this is Josh, California Through My Lens, or Through My Lens. He makes these like multi-hour long road trip videos of him and his dad going around. And they're like 2-3 hour videos and they get millions of views. I think that there's certainly a big appeal of like the father and son thing about travel. I think it skews to an older demographic that likes to watch things on televisions. And so there's just a lot of people that are into that, and there's not a lot of that content on YouTube. A lot of people doing backflips off waterfalls. So I think that's one of the reasons why. Josh is absolutely an inspiration for us here in Yellow Productions, getting into some of the longer vlogs. The Comic-Con video that I did was 2 hours and 20 minutes long, walking along the convention floor, and it's done pretty good. In like 4 or 5 days, it's up to 50,000 views or something like that. So I think there is like YouTube that used to be a 3-minute thing, or TikTok that everybody's like shorts, this and that. Like people are coming to YouTube for longer and longer content. Dr. Moby says, your videos are dope. Thank you so much, Dr. Moby. Points Traveler says, how in the world did you get a Rimowa suitcase for $400? Points Traveler, I went to this place in Munich called Hetzenecker. It's like a brick and mortar store that's down this alley that all they sell are Rimowa suitcases. And Rimowa has this thing where like they don't allow merchants to like advertise a price that's cheaper than their set prices, and so the store has no prices on it. There's no prices when you go in the store. And so when you ask them how much something, you have to ask how much everything is, and then they're like, well, this is the price, but if you do it by cash, it's this price. And like, then when I said like, okay, we bought like 4 Rimowa suitcases while we were there. We're like, this one, and this one, and they're like, okay, hold on. And then they leave the store and like put on a jacket and come back 10 minutes later with the suitcases. I don't know where they store them. I don't know where they come from, but like legitimately this store has like, Japanese people love Rimowa suitcases, like Japanese horde after horde after horde of people that are just coming in and leaving with Rimowa suitcases. So that is where we got that. Remy asks if we've used air beds for the princess. No, we've not used any inflatable beds for the princess. We generally just find a hotel that we can get like 2 double beds or something like that. So she'll co-sleep with one of us. Amber says Chris can rent out luggage as a side hustle. I've been loaning or giving away some of the case to some of my friends as they've got travels. Some people don't want them, so they come back. But Point Traveler says, where is your next trip, Chris? Our next trip we are planning is to Western England. That's where we bought our latest travel book from Rick Steves Travel Guides. We enjoy Rick Steves Travel Guides. Sim says, have you been to or plan to visit mainland China? Millions of people from the U.S. and other countries have visited this year. Many have posted videos, but wonder what travel tips you give. Sim, I have been to Beijing to visit the Great Wall. Search for Yellow Productions Beijing. You'll find that video. All right.
Yes, it's the time you've been waiting for. It's time for the giveaway.
Okay, fellow explorers, in every video I always give away a t-shirt. Today we're vying for the classic Yellow Productions crew shirt. I've got some new shirts that I'm going to be giving out. If you haven't seen my video from Din Tai Fung in Anaheim, I was showcasing one of those new shirts. You'll see here soon, as I'll hold them up to give those out soon. But if you haven't and you're into it, you can absolutely check that out. So my question to you to win this lucky shirt is the guidebook that I held up earlier. Where was it to? Name the place and the country So place and country. If you can name the place and the country, prefecture and country, then you will win a Yellow Productions cruise shirt shipped to you. And if you didn't win one, then you want to pick one up, you can pick one up at the Yellow Productions shop. Link's right here. It's also in the description below. And if you wonder, Chris, when is the next live stream? Probably next week, but I haven't picked a day and time yet. But as soon as I do, I will email everybody who is on my email list. You can sign up for my email list right here. All right, I see some winners.
And now we have a winner chicken dinner.
Winner chicken dinner. Do you know who? Do you know who the number one winner is? Of course you know who the number one winner is. The number one winner to put Kyushu and Japan on the same line is Panjo. Congratulations, Panjo. I think we're up in the 20s for Panjo. But when Panjo wins, we always get a number 2. I think we've got a first-time winner right here for Crystal. Crystal, congratulations. You also win a Yellow Productions cruise shirt shipped to you anywhere in the world. Send me an email. You'll find my email in the description below, chris@yellow-productions.com, and I will get the shirt headed right out to you. Let me know your address and your size, and it'll be coming at you just like that. Well, fellow explorers, it is always a pleasure to hang out with y'all. Thank you so much for hanging out today, and as usual, I won't say goodbye because I'll see you in the next video.